How can you get your Illinois driver's license back after a DUI suspension? Welcome, my name is Steve Fagan from the law firm of Fagan, Fagan & Davis, a DUI defense firm here in the Chicago area in Illinois. Join me for a moment. Why don't you come on in? We'll talk about how you get your driving privileges restored after a DUI suspension in Illinois. So first of all, when we're talking about getting your driver's license back in Illinois, we're not talking about your physical driver's license, that piece of plastic that the officer took from you when you were arrested for DUI. That's all it is. It's a certificate that says that you have valid driving privileges with the Secretary of State. We're really concerned with what the Secretary of State's computer says about the validity of your driving privileges. And the reason we're worried about that is because a suspension for DUI means you can't drive, and if you do, you're facing criminal charges if you're found to be doing that. In many cases, the charges that you'll face are felony charges, so it's quite serious. Now, how this all starts is that when you're arrested for DUI in Illinois, the police officer gives you, in most circumstances, what's called a notice of statutory summary suspension. If you were given the incorrect copy of the form, you'll have something called the law enforcement sworn report. But it's a notice of statutory summary suspension that contains the same information. Now, what happens with this other copy, the law enforcement sworn report, for example, is that one copy goes to the clerk's office in the court where your case will be heard for DUI, and the other copy goes down to the Secretary of State of Illinois. The Secretary of State of Illinois will then inspect your driving record to see what kind of suspension should enter and whether you submit it to chemical testing or not. Now, suspension will be entered for as little as 6 months and up to as many as 36 months, depending on those factors. How to challenge the suspension and whether a permit is available and how to get a driving permit is a great question, but it's a question for another video, and if you look through our videos, you'll find the answers to those questions as well. Right now, let's talk about what happens next after the Secretary of State gets this notice. You, a couple of weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, will get something from the Secretary of State called a confirmation of suspension. This suspension is going to list some very important information on the upper right-hand side of the page. First of all, this piece of paper is going to indicate the beginning, the start date of your suspension. Now that should take place on the 46th day following the date you were given the notice of suspension by the officer. The Secretary of State will indicate the start date of your suspension and that it begins at 12:01 a.m. on that day. That's when it's prohibited for you to be driving. Another important piece of information directly underneath that is going to be the projected eligibility date for reinstatement. It's provisional. Why is it provisional? Why is it projected? Why don't they just say, here's when the suspension ends? Because you have to do something to end it. What you have to do? I'll tell you. You have to pay a reinstatement fee that the Secretary of State is going to specify. The Secretary of State is going to indicate to you what you have to pay, when you have to pay it, and where you can pay it, and what form of payment is accepted. That's all going to come with your confirmation of statutory summary suspension. We certainly have been contacted by people arrested for driving while suspended, a criminal offense in Illinois, simply because they failed to pay that reinstatement fee in a timely fashion. In some cases, they were suspended for years longer than they should have been had they just paid that fee. When should you pay that fee? Should you pay it right away? No, you shouldn't, because what if your lawyer can get the suspension thrown out and you won't have to pay that fee? What you should do instead is target a date about 45 days before the termination date or the projected eligibility date for reinstatement and pay the fee then. Because you want to make sure that the Secretary of State has enough time to process your payment, put that information into their computer system so that when your eligibility date rolls around, you'll be eligible to drive right away. You're not going to get a physical driver's license back. You will, however, get a letter from the Secretary of State that indicates that you are eligible to drive and that your driving privileges have been restored. Thank you for joining me. Once again, my name is Steve Fagan from the law firm Fagan, Fagan & Davis. We're DUI lawyers here in the Chicago area, including Cook Lake and DuPage County courts. If you or a loved one is facing DUI charges and you want to talk about how we can help you, pick up the phone and call the number on your screen right now or send us an email. we'll be happy to get in touch and discuss how we can help defend you.